Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I thought I'd get a close-up of this one while it's in bloom. I was looking at this while I was setting the tripod up, and a hybridizer would probably look at that bloom and class it as a failure. If you look at other pictures of Tulumias, it's got a very, very underdeveloped top part to the bloom. You know, the top sepal and the other two petals are very, very small. Now for me, the lip is what it's all about on this one, and I was just setting this up to take a still for my records, and I thought there's a little bit of backlighting there, and as such it's highlighting the delicate veining in the orange part of that lip. It's almost an extension of the yellow out into the orange, and quite honestly, to me, the colour on that is just stunning. The fact that the bloom isn't quite a normal Tulumia shape, to me, doesn't matter. But I bet a hybridizer looked at that and thought, what a shame! Oh, if only that top bit had developed better. But Tulumias have many shapes. They have a basic oncidium shape, because they are an oncidium effectively, or were once. So that probably would be frowned upon. But am I frowning? Am I? Hell, look at it, it's gorgeous. Anyway, I've got some other bits and pieces that I'll add on to this to make up a video, and we'll see how we go. Okay, first thing I've noticed is that little rhodostictum spike looks like it might actually have two blooms. The last one only had one bloom. Oh, and I was really sad because it only lasted 3 months. You know, I mean, that is so disappointing. But if that has two blooms and lasts equally as long, I will be over the moon. But it does look like that spike has a split in it, which means there's going to be two buds, but early days yet. Also, I had a quick check. The equinox has just passed, so our day lengths are now less than 12 hours, and they will deteriorate at a rate of knots. It's weird the way it goes. As we head into October, you know, we'll be heading down towards 11, and then by the end of October, we'll be down below 10 hours. And at that point, everything slows down. Yeah? The only way the growing season is extended is if there are a lot of bright sunny days towards the end of October. And that will keep things growing for a while. Yeah? So it might only be a couple of weeks, but that extension can be really useful if it's there. You know, English weather doesn't... and through the jungle, my Psychopsis has opened overnight. That's the Papilio alba form. That is a good bloom. So I'm quite happy that that's not the Psychopsis I've recently repotted. It's the one I repotted a while ago that is now growing some decent roots. And that, for this plant, is a perfectly formed bloom, which means this spike is now getting everything it needs to produce that bloom. That lip will open a little bit more as the day progresses. It'll just uncurl a bit at the base, but yeah, so that Psychopsis has recovered. That one's going to push on nicely now, thank goodness. As for the other one, I'm not so sure. I mean, the bud is getting some colour on it. I don't think it's going to blast. I think it's gone too far to blast, but it's just had a shock. I mean, it's just had a repot and a complete change of media. It's now just sitting gently in some moss. You know, well, the video's quite recent, so most of you have probably seen it anyway. And hopefully now it will produce some new roots to go with this new leaf. We shall see. But anyway, coming on, I'll see what else I find. One thing I have noticed is that big blue Vanda, it's already dropped one bloom. I can see brown on the back of another, and you can see it's going to go soon. So that's not long for this world. Let me head in the jungle here. This is what I have to put up with these flipping long cane dendrobiums. Wherever I am, I've got my head in a bush. But at the moment there's no other way to accommodate them. That will change in the not too distant future. Now this lovely little miniature is Sophronitis cernua, which is, I think that's been reclassified as Cattleya now. Excuse the plane. It's the one thing I can't change. Too close to the airport. But it's having a spurt. There's quite a few new growths suddenly decided to push out all at once. There's 2 there that are very obvious. There's another 2 under there. That's 4 heading off in that direction, and there's 1 over this side as well. So that's 5 new growths, all starting at the same time. Now this one for me doesn't flower on every single new growth. It's usually about every other one. Well, it's probably more like 2 out of 3. But with 5 new growths starting off, we should see some blooms. Now some say at the Orchid Society that our tropical orchids put on a bit of a spurt as the day lengths start to shorten. And I'm keeping my eye out this year to see if that's actually true. The really long day lengths don't suit a lot of those orchids. You know, their day lengths are 3 or 4 hours longer than where they would come from. Now, that's just the way our country works. But the spring and the autumn have got day lengths the same as where they come from. So it would be closer to their ideal conditions. So it sort of makes sense. I've got no proof of it. But I'm going to check things this year, and I'm just going to watch what happens now. You know, we've dropped down below the 13, a fraction below 12. So as the day length shorten, in theory, the period between just below 11 and just above 13 is their perfect world. And in theory, they should grow a little bit better in those times. So we'll see. Anyway, hopefully blooms to come on that one. They are gorgeous. Now that's a bit of a surprise, and I would say a first. This little Arengus decariana is the one I took out to the Orchid Society, and it lost all its blooms. They just dropped, basically. There is 1 single bloom that's just opened overnight. That's all that's left of what was quite a spectacular blooming. So I've got 1 bloom left that's just opened. And then I asked myself, well, why didn't that bloom drop then? You know why it didn't drop? It's been pollinated. It's actually a seed pod forming, which I don't want. It's coming off. It's not a rare plant. For somebody to go to the trouble of actually dealing with that seed pod, it's not worth the effort, quite honestly. These are readily obtainable. They're not rare or anything like that. They're not endangered in the wild or anything unusual. Although, as far as I'm concerned, most things in the wild are endangered in some shape or form. It's called us. And as long as we keep breeding and spreading all over the world until there's no places left for nature and wildlife, then yes, it's all endangered. But first ever seed pod I've ever had. It's a shame that I lost those blooms, but so be it. You know, it will bloom again. It's now declared blooming size, first time bloomer for me, and there were no signs of old spikes on it when I got it, so it was a young plant. It's now matured, good enough to bloom. So there's no reason why it shouldn't do it again now. It wouldn't have done that if it wasn't happy with its light levels and its conditions. So it's okay. Where it is, where it lives is now fine. I'm happy that it can just stay where it lives, be dealt with exactly the same as it always has been, and it should bloom again. But yeah, I don't know how long. I think they're only about a 2-week bloom anyway. They don't last long, but that'll be the last one for some considerable time. And a first seed pod. Don't need it, I don't want it, but you know, it's just nice to know it happened somehow. Something got in here and pollinated it. I can't think what. The normal pollination for these is moths at night. But something obviously got at it. Now this Vanda is doing a colour change thing, because when I filmed it earlier and the blooms were quite new, I said it seems to have changed its colour and gone a bit more autumny instead of the quite bright orange. But you can now see the colour is changing, yeah, and the depth of the orange is now showing quite nicely. I call it a Vanda. It was probably originally an Ascascenda, but because of the renaming process, the bit that went into that particular cross, I think, has been renamed Vanda anyway. So it's a Vanda cross with a Vanda now, so it's a Vanda. Well, it's a no ID at the end of the day, so what it's really called, I'm not fussed. But yeah, it's the colour is changing from the autumn tints to the orange. It's always been a good bloomer since I got this one. And it often puts up 2 spikes at the same time. It's floriferous. And that is looking good. I'm quite pleased with that. Yeah, nice colour. Now this manky looking object is my Rhynchostylus gigantea. I have 2 of these. The other one I've just put back up there. I'm giving them more light at the moment. These are difficult because I've got so much conflicting information about how much light they need, how much heat they need, how much they drink, that it's difficult for me to really say what's going to work well for them. This has never been a good looking plant, this one. It's always had stripy leaves. Whether that's a problem with it, I don't know. I don't see why it should be, but it's got quite a lot of bug damage on some of the leaves as they were new. The latest leaf's not looking too bad, but that seriously looks like a spike. I don't know if anybody's got one of these and knows what the spike looks like, but I mean, that's the last root that it grew. For me, it seems to grow 1 root a year, maybe 2 at the most. It's incredibly slow to grow roots. I mean, it has got roots. They're all sort of down the bottom of the pot. They've escaped. But yeah, I got a feeling that's a spike. So if anybody's got one of these and knows it well, you might be able to verify. And if you have got one that's growing really well and blooms on a regular basis, let us know how you do it, will you? Because I've had these 2 some time now, and if that is a bloom spike, it's the first time ever. It might just be that the plant's not mature enough. You know, there's many reasons why a plant won't bloom. And just saying, oh, it needs more light, sometimes it isn't that. It can be other things. So, yeah, we might have a bloom spike. Time will tell. While we're on the why won't you bloom subject, this is a notorious non-bloomer. Well, certainly is in the UK. This is Rhyncholalia glauca. And I got a feeling without proper outdoor light this may never bloom. But the plant effectively rotted. It just went downhill incredibly quickly, and I managed to just save 2 of the leads. I say saved, only just. Not in the best of health, but since I took the leads off, I mean, I've got 2 new growths coming out down the bottom there, another nice strong one there, another one over to the right hand side there, and what looks like another one right next to it at the base of that pseudo bulb. So it's made it, it's saved, and it's done a flipping good root system since it went on that mount. But obviously these are divisions. Now, I don't know how much of a mature plant you manage to keep when you take a division, if you see what I mean, because there's a lot of cheating goes on when people are selling plants. You know, they can show you 2 pseudo bulbs on the plant that have bloomed, but that's when it was on a mature large plant, and what they've done is taken a piece off of the edge, and in doing so may have actually recreated a younger plant by definition and whether it will bloom or not. So you often find in the Cattleya Alliance what looks like a blooming sized plant because it's got, you know, signs of spikes at the top of the pseudo bulbs, may well be a division, and you may have to wait, you know, several new growths before it gets back to be strong enough to bloom again. But that one, I've had it a long time. Obviously I've set it back by whatever the rot was, and starting again with these new leads. But you know, at least it's growing. But I would suggest that it's going to be at least next year, if not the year after, before that gets back to blooming size now. And that's if it ever does. I just may not ever be able to give that enough light in my environment. It is an incredibly high light lover. You know, without it, it won't bloom. So that may always be on the why won't you bloom list. but I'm confident I know why. All I can do is my best. Okay, without starting a shed load of questions that I won't be able to answer, I got that out to take to the raffle, and then I realised I'd actually opened it, which isn't very fair. So I thought, well, as it's open, I'll give it a go. But I'll say straight up front, I don't know what I'm doing. This is deviating from my normal practice, so I haven't got a clue what effect it's going to have. Watching people who use it on a regular basis, I know to aim at, you know, a TDS level of, that's just RO water at the moment. Looks a bit grubby because I've just watered a couple of other things, but basically a TDS level of sort of 120, around 120 to 140, I don't believe can do that much harm. It's a pretty weak mix, whatever it is. But obviously to get this to work, I do need to make sure the pH is relatively low. You know, I mean, at the moment, that pH of that water is going to be up near the 7 mark, and that's not suitable for the elements that are in here. Now, this stuff has actually got 2% nitrate nitrogen in it, so it has got a little bit of normal feed, but all that it's going to back it up with is the calcium and the magnesium. But this has also got chelated iron in 2 different forms. Now, iron is one of those micronutrients that does need a low pH, or it just won't go in and do any good. So I may have to artificially lower the pH of that, which is easy enough. You've seen how I do that. But all I've got left to water today, all my mounts had a flush today, so I didn't actually want to add anything into that, or it wouldn't be a flush, would it? And it was their due date for a flush, so they've all been washed. And the holy clay pots were flushed last time, so I thought, well, I'll give that a go on the holy clay pots. The trouble is, I don't know whether I'm going to see any effect or not. I don't know what I'm looking for. But at the end of the day, with the way I add my feed to that water, there's very little of the... I mean, I sort of class my holy clay pots almost as mounted. I know they're in chunky bark, but, you know, they've got a very fast wet-dry cycle. The bark doesn't hold a lot of moisture for very long. And because it's all relatively new Orchiata bark, it probably has little, if any, effect on the pH of any humidity or moisture left in that pot. So the way I feed and water, they've always had a pH of up near the 6.5 mark, which could mean I've excluded the iron that's in my normal fertiliser. And although it's a micro element, you've got to have some. So I'm just going to give that a go. As I said, it's open now. I can't really put it on the raffle table because the seal's broken. It's not very fair on somebody to get, you know, I could have put any old stuff in there to mess people's plants up. Not that I would, but you know what I mean. If something's opened, it's always a bit iffy if you're, you know, even if you win it in a raffle, so I'm not going to do that. But I thought I'd try it. What I'm looking for, if there's going to be any visible effect, I haven't got a flipping clue. But the one thing that could be lacking on the plants is the iron element. It is one of those low pH micro elements. It needs that to get in there. But it may be that the fact that this is chelated iron, whatever the hell that is, and it's 2 different types. It says iron chelated by, and then a big load of letters, and then some more iron chelated by a different load of letters. Now, maybe whatever that process is allows the iron to be absorbed at higher levels, although it might be just to make it fully soluble in water. It's got nothing to do with pH whatsoever. Anyway, I'm going to give it a go, add some in, check TDS level, see what the pH is, and if it's still relatively high, then I'll artificially lower it for this watering on the holy clay pots only. But what the hell I'm looking for, if there's going to be any effect with just one watering, I haven't got a clue. We'll have to wait and see. But I just as well use a bit of it, I suppose. It's purple. Oh, it's like a flipping art shop in here. The fertiliser stuff's blue, this stuff's purple. was a sploop, a very small sploop, because I don't want to overdo this, but let's see what we've got. Am I good or am I good? Hang on, let's have a swirl around. Yeah, that's a TDS of 139 on my meter. That's about where I wanted, so that's okay. It's not too strong, I hope. As I said, I don't really know what I'm doing. I suspect the pH is going to be high, too high for what is in this. Why the hell that's reading that high, I don't know. Well, if you think about it, calcium is the basis of hardness in water. Anyway, I got a pH of 7, 6.9. That's too high. If this stuff's going to work and be absorbed to give a maximum effect, that needs to drop down by practically 10 points. Yeah, 6.8, 6.9, so we'll have a play with that. Alright, let's see what that's done. Probably overcooked it now, knowing me. Well, that's right on the boundary. Any lower would be outside the magic figures, so that's down to 5.5. That's as low as I dare go. But from the limited knowledge I've got, at that pH the iron will go straight in, so that's good. So if there has been a shortage, that should sort that out. It's around 5.5, 5.6. It's been flicking between the two, so that's good enough. We'll see what it does. As I say, I don't know what I'm doing as such, because I haven't done this before. I don't know what the effect's going to be. I don't even know if I'll be able to see the effect. So it's all based on, you know, stuff, information, not by first-hand experience. And for me, there's no substitute for that. So, oh well, holy clay pots, you're in for a shock. Shock to the system, maybe. Anyway, we'll give that a go and see what happens. Right, that's it for today. That's a trifle worrying when you do something and you know in your mind you're not sure what you're doing. But anyway, holy clay pots, including the 2 Phalaenopsis, which often get forgotten, all done with new stuff. If they're all dead in the morning, there'll be trouble. What's the expression? I have a certain set of skills, I will find you, etc. I can't see as it can do any harm. I mean, I know there's people at the Orchid Society that swear by that stuff, but I've never inquired as to how they use it, how often they use it, and what they use it with. Do they mix it with other stuff? Do they use it on its own? So I've never bothered asking, because I've never planned on using the flipping stuff. So we'll see. We'll see how we go. Fatality! Yay! I did say that one's. Look, the other one's off as well. Look, it's hanging up there. Yeah, on its way out, I'm afraid. That is a shame. But it's been out ages. You know, you have to go with the bonuses. Anyway, that's it for today. Lots of bits and pieces, different things, different chats, all that sort of stuff. That's how it goes. I'll see you next time.